The Seattle Kraken picked Eduard Sale with the 20th overall pick. Let's talk about what the Kraken like about him, what the experts are saying about him, and then get you ready for the rest of the 2023 NHL draft. That's coming up on Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
Before we get started on today's episode, I want to let you know today's episode brought to you by our friends eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay's guaranteed fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. My name is Erica L. Ayala. I'm your host of Locked On Kraken. And as I told you, to everydayers, have some family visiting. This is Pepe. So he'll be joining me to break down the 20th overall pick, Eduard Sale. Now, not a defenseman like I had thought we would pick, but let's get to know Eduard a little bit better. This is the graphic that the Seattle Kraken put up. He is from the Czech Republic. Now, if you follow my work, particularly on the women's hockey side, you know I am very high on what Team Czechia is doing. That translates to their men's and women's programs, their development programs. And you can see he's the first Czech player to be taken in this year's draft. He had 14 points in 43 regular season games in HC Kometa. That's the Czech Extraliga, the top men's pro league in Czechia. And we'll talk about that a little bit. He was named the Rookie of the Year after leading all junior players in scoring. He won a silver medal with Team Czechia in the U20 World Junior Championships and was tied for fifth in scoring on his team, and a top 3 player in Czechia's roster at the U18 World Juniors. And that is Eduard Sale. Now, we got to hear a little bit from the Seattle Kraken by way of course, Bob Condor and the rest of the team in Nashville. Here's a few of the things that we heard from the reporting directly from the Seattle Kraken. Now, you might have noticed if you watched the draft that amateur scouting director Robert Cron was able to introduce or announce the pick for the Seattle Kraken. And of that, Cron said, "It's a second time I get a chance to shake the hand of a player from my hometown." He, of course, was talking about the ability to draft Martin Nikas alongside Ron Francis when the two were with the Carolina Hurricanes at the 2017 draft. So there are a few links outside of Brno. Now, Dave Haxtell and Ron Francis were working with Team Canada in 2019. That's part of their lineage. We've talked about that before. And they were able to see Shala at the IIHF tournament in Slovakia. And so this is what Francis had to say, Ron Francis, about the pick of Shala. "We're happy to get Shala where we did in the draft order." And apparently he'd been a topic of conversation for the Seattle Kraken. And we'll get into, again, what some other experts are saying. We'll also go back to our mock draft, and you'll hear from Hadi Kalikesh about what he thought, because Shala did go before 20 in our mock draft to Winnipeg. So I'll play that for you a little bit later on the show. But again, at that juniors trip, that was something where Ron Francis and Dave Haxtell were able to see Shala, but then again, they saw him at the 2023 World Juniors in Halifax. And Ron Francis says the kid's a real smart hockey player. He's got skills. I think there's big upside to his game. And whenever Edmund played in his age, he wasn't a good player. He was dominant. That's what Craig Button, former NHL GM and now with TSN, had to say. Button really likes this pick, says he's an energetic, enthusiastic person. He's got loads of ability and there's joy in how he plays. And I talked about this before. I think that the Seattle Kraken do want a good culture fit. Now, there are some things I just think regarding what our needs are that I'm not sure if Chalet is the right fit right now, but it seems from what I've been reading that the consensus is that he will not be an NHL ready player, but that he will be a player in development. And so we're going to talk about that, including there's something that Ron Francis really likes about Shala that makes me think that there is going to be a decent amount of development for Shala and that it will fit into, again, the philosophy of how Ron Francis likes to build his teams, which is from the back and the center. And so we'll talk about that coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by Athletic Greens. Now, I've talked to you before about being someone who's usually on the road a lot, and so getting the proper nutrition can sometimes be difficult, but not with AG1, whether it's your morning routine at home or something that you can take with you on the road. The number one most important thing is that you need to get the vitamins, nutrients, and supplements that you need to fuel your day. So I, again, started drinking AG1 because I liked having something that was a morning routine that was easy. I put 1 scoop in 8 ounces of water, shake that sucker up in the bottle that AG1 sent me, and I am good to go with 75 high quality ingredients that give me key daily nutrients, and support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. All things you need when you are a multimedia podcaster, writer, all kinds of things. And so it's the micro habit that really delivers macro benefits. And that's why I like to use AG1. If a comprehensive solution is what you need for your supplement routine, then try AG1 and you will get a free 1-year supply of the vitamin D supplement. It's a little droplet. I still use it in my morning tea or with my AG1 sometimes. I also have talked about, for the everydayers, I love the travel packs. Those were super convenient for me. All of that will come with your first purchase. Go out and drink AG1. Head to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL Network to check it out. Okay, thank you for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily routine. We are here talking on what will be day 2 of the NHL draft. The Seattle Kraken have already picked number 20, Eduard Sale. But let me remind you what our experts had to say about Chalet. Again, he went 18th overall in our mock draft to Winnipeg. So first you'll hear Winnipeg, our host of Locked On Jets, talk about why they liked Chalet, and then you'll hear Hadi talk about the analysis, and then we'll get you ready for day 2 of the 2023 NHL draft.
With the 18th pick, we have the Winnipeg Jets on the clock.
With the 18th overall pick in the 2023 NHL Draft, Locked On Winnipeg Jets is proud to draft Eduard Sale from HC Commodore. Chalet is a wonderfully skilled, extremely talented, and very much raw but still developing young winger with a great shot, excellent passing, and high hockey IQ. Given that the Jets will be drafting towards the latter half of the first round, Chalet could be a very intriguing pick with a lot of upside, and Winnipeg believes in his ability to work on some of the compete issues and continue to develop his offensive instincts. His potential is extremely high. He could be a wonderful top 6 winger. He brings some formidable size, and with a bit more strength and aggression, could become a punishing winger if he also works a little bit more on his mobility. But all of the IQ, decision-making, passing, vision, and shooting are there. It's just marrying a few other elements to make him into the complete winger that the Jets desperately need.
And Harrison Lee of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, your thoughts on this pick?
Yeah, so Eduard Sale is a very interesting guy. He started off the year for me in the top 10. I was really impressed with his skill set, with his off-puck movement, with his goal-scoring ability. But as the year went on, it was very obvious that you're getting nothing out of him in the defensive zone so far in his career. And obviously playing at the Czech top level didn't help in that regard. He was facing very strong, very, very powerful forwards on the back check, had trouble getting under sticks and getting, turnovers created for his team. But I feel like there was an overcorrection. I've seen him outside of first rounds entirely, but I still think he's a first-round talent with the offensive skill and the offensive intelligence in order to make it work. So I've still got my bets hedged on him. 18's a tiny bit high for me. I've got him at 22nd in my rankings, but I'm not against this bet at all. For the Jets, they're looking for high upside profiles, and Chalet definitely fits that.
So there you have it. That's what our in-house expert, Hadi Kalakesh, thinks about Chalet. Now, you heard William talk about that. He felt in our mock draft that Winnipeg could fix some of the compete issues. You also heard Hadi Kalakesh talk about that there's no upside on the defensive end. So those are not things that I love. But I trust the process. I trust Ronnie Francis and Kron. And if they see something in Chalet, then that's what we're going to go with. We have seen reporting that, Chalet is headed to the development system. He'll be in the OHL with the Barrie Colts, per Jeff Marek. And I do think that this is, again, a longer-term project. We kind of alluded to that on an episode earlier this week and a little bit last week as well. With the 20th overall pick, this is going to be something that is going to take time, not a player that we think is going to be NHL ready necessarily. Now, is that something that we need? Arguably no, but I am curious to see where the Seattle Kraken go from here, because I do think that we need to get some defensive young puck-moving defensemen into our system, and we really haven't seen that as much as I would like with our draft picks, but there's always ways to get that, and maybe the Seattle Kraken, hopefully the Seattle Kraken, hello, Pepe, hopefully the Seattle Kraken will find a way to focus on defense. But let's get you ready for the remainder of the draft. Of course, you know that we have all of your draft coverage over on Locked On NHL. You saw a little bit of the mock draft. Although I am with family and will only be coming to you in the mornings, we do have our experts weighing in on the picks as they come in. So highly recommend that you check out Locked On NHL and stick around for Locked On Kraken, because we will be talking about the other 9 picks that we have as of right now. Again, I would like to see some defensemen, but what's available? And ultimately, that's what it was. What was available to the Seattle Kraken? The philosophy has remained the same with Ron Francis, best available. But I told you there was a little wrinkle that I think is intriguing. You've heard that Chalet is a winger, but what Ron Francis likes is that he grew up and is a natural center. So that fits into the philosophy for the Seattle Kraken. So very curious to see where Chalet eventually ends up in the organization. But we'll close out today's episode reminding you of the picks that the Seattle Kraken have in for day 2, as well as just recap the top 10 picks in the NHL Draft 2023. That's coming up on Locked On Kraken. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily routine. A reminder that coming up on Locked On Kraken tomorrow, as we close out our draft week content, we will let you know who the Seattle Kraken pick with their remaining 9 picks after Eduard Sale is their first overall pick this year at 20th, their first pick, 20th overall, I should say. And the Seattle Kraken have 9 more picks. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but as a reminder, if you're not an everydayer, and hello to our YouTubers, hello, I hope you enjoy Pepe, my little assistant today, hanging out with me, and also those who listen on audio. If you're not an everydayer, let me just remind you what we've got. So the second round, we have 3 picks, our original natural pick, but also we have a pick from that we got in our trade, the Giordano Blackwell trade with Toronto, as well as our trade with Washington. In the third round and fourth round and fifth round, we have 1 pick. The sixth round, we have 2 picks, our natural pick, as well as a pick that we got for Johansson that sent Sprong our way, Johansson to the Capitals. And then we also have a pick, obviously our natural pick, in the 7th round. So what is Seattle going to do with those picks? I'm very curious. Again, we will talk about it tomorrow on Friday's episode of Locked On Kraken. And then early next week, there will be a prospects camp in Seattle. So we'll get to hear from some of these players and have some video from them on the ice. So that's going to be exciting. But as promised, let's just recap for those who maybe weren't able to catch the draft, what we saw in the first 10 picks. The Blackhawks, as expected, did go with Connor Bedard. I thought it was very interesting that I can't remember what pick it was, but I think it was, past pick 10. People were asking some of the draft picks what they felt about Connor Bedard, what we don't know about him. That's always a little odd, but that's how much this young man pulls when it comes to hype. And so, of course, he was projected as goes 1. With the second overall pick, the Anaheim Ducks go with Leo Carlsson, a center from Sweden. And the Columbus Blue Jackets pick Adam Fantilli out of Michigan. You probably heard Maddie Beniers talk a little bit about Maddie if you watch the full interview after him winning Rookie of the Year. With the 4th overall pick, Will Smith, and I didn't hear this, but I heard reporting that he did play Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I love that he's leaning into that, especially with the Bel-Air reboot. So that's a lot of fun. Will Smith, another center, going pretty high in the draft. The Montreal Canadiens pick David Reinbacher, one of the defensemen that was listed heavy high on the list. Again, not someone I thought Seattle was going to have access to, but also, I don't know, they wanted best available, and they went with Chalet. Again, very curious to see if we end up with a solid D out of this draft. Speaking of defensemen, Arizona Coyotes go that way with Shimashev, Russian junior player, 6'4", 198 pounds. There you go. The Flyers go with a right winger, also out of the KHL, and that's Matvei Minchov. For the 8th pick overall, the Washington Capitals pick a USA U18 national team development player, Ryan Leonard, 6 feet even, 190 pounds. And we have the Red Wings went with Nate Danielson. He comes out of the WHL, a centerman. Then at the 10th pick, the St. Louis Blues go with Dvorsky, a Swedish player, 6'1", 200 pounds, great on his stick and can attack in several ways, NHL.com says of the Blues pick. So those are just the top 10 picks. Hello, Pepe. It's getting excitable. It's almost time for the walk. Those are the top 10 picks. Again, make sure you head to Locked On NHL if you want more in-depth analysis of all of the picks, especially in the first round. Make sure you're following Locked On Sharks and Locked On Predators, who have their hosts with their feet on the ground. I think I loved what Nick from the Predators was asking about karaoke. If you've never been to Nashville, karaoke is very much a thing, just cover bands and stuff like that in general. I think there's like a thing you have to play cover music in bars in Nashville. Anyway, I thought it was interesting to hear some players talk about what teammates they think would be great and not so great at karaoke, including, of course, Maddie Beniers taking a chance to mention his roommate, Will Borgen. Is he good at karaoke? Is he bad at karaoke? Go check that out on Locked On Predators on their social media. And then, of course, we here at Locked On Kraken will be back to recap the rest of our picks, 9 picks overall. Did we make any trades? What are we thinking about these picks? And of course, we'll have the off season to analyze all of that and more. We'll have the development camp that I talked about and free agency. I talked about it. Carson Soucy looks like he's out the door. I don't think things are looking great for Ryan Donato. Martin Jones probably not sticking around. Is there a trade looming? We talked about Erik Karlsson, who has been attached to the Seattle Kraken. So we'll have plenty to talk about, but that'll do for today. Thanks for being patient with me as I'm with family. So, we'll try to get these out as early as possible in the morning. But if there's any breaking news that happens during the day, we'll have to talk about it next week. As always, be kind to yourself, be kind to each other. We hold fast, we stay true, and of course, we say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.